Thanks for tuning in to Vitality and Motion. Let this be a place to grow your mindset and prioritize movement. All audio is original with music and production support from Riverside as my editing platform. This podcast is for education and inspiration only, and any studies or products I mention are simply for context. Take what fits in your life and check in with your healthcare medical providers as you feel is necessary. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Vitality in Motion. I'm your host Maddie, and today we're going to be discussing all things protein. I wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit further, kind of discuss what protein is and what it does for our bodies, meat quality, and why it matters and why I find it so important. So I'm going to share a little research about that, and then I think I'll finish with recommending some snacks that I love. So let's go ahead and get into it. What does protein actually do for the body? And why does it matter? So protein are these building blocks made up of amino acids. Your body uses these amino acids to make compounds of new proteins to build and repair muscles and bones, and then other compounds to build hormones and enzymes. So overall, it's helpful for growth and repair of your cells. And we have 11 that our body can make that are considered non-essential, and then 9 that our bodies cannot make that are considered essential. So we need these essential ones in order for our bodies to function. And animal products have the highest amount of these essential amino acids. Then next down the line is going to be things like quinoa and leafy greens. And then also on that list below that is going to be beans, lentils, and nuts. But like I said, animal products do have the highest amount of these essential amino acids. Now, how much do we need to get on a daily basis? Well, if you've ever wondered if you get enough protein, unfortunately, you probably don't. So I know it's usually a hassle, but I recommend just tracking your protein to get a basis of where you're at. And then you can kind of modify from there, whether you need more or less or whatever it may be. And our bodies unfortunately cannot store protein, so it's recommended to eat small amounts at every meal versus just at one big meal. The recommended dietary allowance, or RDA, is 0.8 grams per kilograms of your body weight for a sedentary adult. So for example, if you weigh 120 pounds, you would convert that to kilograms by dividing 120 by 2.2, and that's going to give you 54.5. Then you would multiply that times 0.8 grams per kilograms to get the 43.6 grams per day. Now, if you weigh 120 pounds, there you have it, 43.6 grams per day. But depending on your activity level, I found this presentation by American College of Sports Medicine that was done in 2024. And they have all sorts of data on there. Most of it's ranging from 2014 to 2016. I don't really think the numbers have changed much. Based off of this presentation, there are some variations in the numbers. And in general, if you Google it, it's going to tell you variations as well. I will link this visual for you guys so you can see it, but routinely active adults, which I would say is probably most of us, it's going to be 1.2 to 2.0 grams per kilograms of your body weight. And you would do that same calculation that I just did. And then for healthy older adults, it's 1.0 to 1.2 grams per kilogram. For older adults with acute or chronic disease, it's 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilogram. And then for older adults with severe illness or marked malnutrition, up to 2 grams per kilogram. So these older adults who have either chronic disease or severe illness, protein should be something that you are just loading up on. It's the building blocks to help build and repair those muscles and bones, like I was saying earlier. So now we're just going to get right into it. Is the higher quality meat worth it? So when you see the label organic, obviously the price point is usually more, but you're likely supporting farmers who raise their cattle humanely. And the environment is also better not only for the animals, but the farmers and workers too, because they aren't exposed to the toxins and pesticides or whatever it may be. They're also working a longer season because there's more work that goes into the process of maintaining the farm. So they may be able to support their family for a longer period versus just maybe a season. And when you see a term like grass-fed and grass-finished or 100% grass-fed, the animals are not eating feed with genetically modified corn or soy. And also products like produce are not sprayed with pesticides. So as the saying goes, you are what you eat. And animals will obviously kind of hold on to those things like omega-6s, and then you're buying that meat at the grocery store and ingesting not only the animal, but what it was fed. I'll explain a little more about what omega-6s are in a bit, but I wanted to get into a study. There was a meta-analysis done in 2016 comparing 67 studies showing that eating organic meat has a higher content of fatty acids, which essentially are building blocks for fat, which we also need, and provide us with a better ratio of omega-3 than omega-6, and have a lower total fat, more antioxidants like beta-carotene and vitamin E. And then the same also goes for pasture-raised chicken. It tends to be on the leaner side and higher in omega-3 fatty acids and antioxidants compared to conventionally raised poultry, largely because the birds have access to forage or are able to graze outside and they have natural sunlight. And if you think about it, we as humans and even plants, like we crave sunlight. If we're not getting that sunlight, we're usually more sad and depressed, and it can affect other things. So same goes for these animals. And although maybe these differences may modestly support heart and metabolic health, I feel like it's still an important concept to be aware of. And as always, overall diet quality is still what matters most. And I wanted to touch on a little bit further before we move on the difference between an omega-3 and omega-6. Both of them are essential polyunsaturated fatty acids that our body essentially cannot make on its own. We need to obtain it through food, similar to what we were discussing earlier with the essential amino acids for the proteins. Same idea. Typically, omega-3s are more for anti-inflammatory, whereas omega-6s can promote inflammation, which, like I've discussed before, inflammation is a crucial part of healing, but again, when we're over-consuming, then it turns into a chronic state of inflammation. Omega-6s, they are essential for cell growth and maintenance, but if we're over consuming that, our bodies are going to be in this constant state of inflammation. Whereas omega-3 fatty acids are anti-inflammatory, so they're kind of like balancing each other out. It's kind of like a game of tug of war. That kind of gets into the topic a little bit about seed oils, because we live in such a dominant omega-6 world, like I was saying. It's literally in all of our processed foods. You can find it in products that it probably doesn't even need to be in. And seed oils has gained such a bad reputation for that. But I definitely think that would completely derail my whole episode about protein. So that will be another episode. Anyway, to get back on track, what to prioritize if you're on a budget and where to find this higher quality meat. So glad you asked. My recommendation is to shop in bulk, like at Costco. Now they do sell, I'm pretty sure, grass-fed and grass-finished beef. And you want to look out for the terms, because marketing is very confusing. It needs to say 100% grass-fed or grass-fed and grass-finished. Because if it just says grass-fed, that means that the animal could have been fed corn or soy products sometime in its lifespan. So make sure to be cautious of those terms. Honestly, the best thing to do is to just either shop at your local butcher, support locally, go to farmers markets. Jake and I actually use this subscription called ButcherBox that ships your meats to you, and they're known for having higher quality meat, so like grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised, all of that stuff. And basically you pick which package you want. So we have the package where we get to pick 6 different kinds of meats. Plus, usually they run a deal, so we get 4 free steaks for the full year. And usually I would say that lasts me about 4 to 6 weeks. That's always a great option too. And then you just kind of pull the meat out from the freezer when you're ready to use it. Like I said, they have other options, so like family options as well, where you can get more meat. I think it overall saves me money because I'm not having to purchase my meat weekly, and I just know that all of the meat I'm getting is a higher quality. I think a main limiting factor for a lot of people here is probably going to be the price, because, we live in an expensive world, and I'm not trying to solve everybody's financial issues, but maybe it's something where you look at your budget and you're like, you know what, we don't really use Netflix anymore, or we're not really using it as much lately. Why don't we take a break from that so we can prioritize buying these higher quality meats? I feel like when there's a will, there's a way. If you want to make this a priority in your life, you will find a way to do so. As I always say, do what makes sense for you. If anything, at least you have some more knowledge or background about meat quality and why I find it important. I feel like the main thing that I would take away from this is we're looking for more consistency, not perfection. I, of course, still go out to dinner, to restaurants, and enjoy a juicy steak that's probably not 100% grass-fed, and I do love an occasional deli sandwich. It's just a part of life. But the main thing is, on a consistent basis, I am still overall eating those higher quality meats. So moving on to the next little bit, I wanted to talk about some of the protein snacks that I love. I love the beef sticks. Paleo Valley is a great brand. Chomps is another great brand. And then for nuts, I love almonds and pumpkin seeds. Organic Valley, the brand, has a lot of great dairy products, and so I usually try to get their cheese sticks, which can, boost your protein a little bit. Cottage cheese is always a good source of protein. I love the brand Good Culture. I feel like sometimes it's hard to find though. And you can do all sorts of things with cottage cheese, as you've probably seen on the internet. I like to go for a sweeter route, and I'll put peanut butter and honey and then put some berries on top. It's just a nice little sweet treat for me. And then I also love organic peanut butter powder. It's easy to throw in things like yogurt, or again, the cottage cheese, or even a smoothie. So those are just some options that can help to kind of boost your protein intake. And honestly, if you could, I would try to stay away from processed meats like deli meats, hot dogs, chicken nuggets, and bacon. Although I do love all those things. Again, we're striving for consistency, not perfection. Next little tidbit I want to get into is kind of like debunking a protein myth, or just kind of looking into the research further, because I feel like I hear this all the time and I never knew how to feel about it. So I feel like I always hear that red meats, especially ultra processed meats, are linked to cancer and CBD, which I agree, the whole ultra processed meat side of it. However, my issue with the research is that they aren't considering other factors like what the animal was fed, and, if corn and soy are inflammatory markers in our bodies, well, duh. I mean, I would say that more than likely it would bump up the risk of cancer and cardiovascular disease. And we as Americans are constantly consuming a bunch of unnecessary stuff in our foods, and I'm honestly kind of sick of it. I don't understand why they can't just give us the straight up food. Obviously, they put certain things in the foods to preserve it longer. I guess that's just why it's better to shop at a farmer's market, or, the whole farm to table idea, because then you know that your food is going to be fresh and higher quality. So going back to the study, processed red meats are consistently linked to higher cardiovascular and cancer risks. And according to the World Health Organization, processed meats are now grouped as group 1 carcinogens. So if you can, try to avoid those. And on the label, you should avoid nitrate, nitrite, cured, or salted. While unprocessed red meat shows a weaker dose-dependent association, meaning that there's different factors that maybe put you at higher risk. So they recommend the portion size of no more than 12 to 18 ounces a week. Your cooking method, so cooking meat at a very high temperature, especially red meat, or charring it increases cancer-linked compounds. It's better to cook it at a lower method like roasting, stew, or even baking is a safer option. I guess to kind of summarize everything, again, this is just my opinion and how I feel about it. Obviously, it's based off the research that I found. So if you feel like you want to prioritize higher quality meats, then great, do that. If you're still on the fence about it and you want to do a little more research, that's fine too. That's kind of what this space is here for, to grow your mindset and make you think outward on certain topics, and then make your own conclusions and opinions. The bottom line here is that when it comes to red meat quality, the strongest health risk is going to be linked to those processed meats, not so much the unprocessed beef. And current evidence is suggesting that if you manage your overall intake, you focus on the way you cook it, and of course, your overall diet quality is what's going to matter most. Anyways, what to focus on this week? Track your protein and calculate the average. I'm curious to see what everyone's average is, because I asked Jake to actually do this, and he was very disappointed with his average, and so he's definitely making some changes to try to boost up his protein. Try to strive for protein and fiber dense snacks. A good rule of thumb is to balance for one meal, as it should have a meat, a veggie, a carb, and then a little bit of a healthy fat, even if that means you're cooking with something like olive oil or avocado oil. So yeah, like I said multiple times before, we are striving for consistency and not perfection here. Thanks again so much for being here. If you're looking to connect with me on socials, my Instagram is vitalityandmotion_. My YouTube is at vitalityandmotion with 2 N's at the end. And then my email is